We are live.
We're live. Woo-hoo.
Okay, so today we are going to talk about women and commitment and how women tend to have problems with commitment, whether that's through relationships, careers, lifestyle, friendships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I was actually one of the articles I shared with you. They were even talking about it. Even goes down to women with commitment phobia. It even goes down to them not wanting like a cat or a fish or even a dog in their life because it means that they'd have to commit to supporting something else other than themselves.
Really? I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know it went like that deep. Like I could see
Mm-hmm.
like a few people maybe,
Mm-hmm.
but because I know like commitment is it's like a thing that you're taught at childhood. Like
Right.
mainly when it comes to having a routine. Like I know for me as a kid, I didn't have a very structured routine
Mm-hmm.
with my family situation. So like even now as an adult, it's really hard for me to get a consistent routine going. Because I have a hard time with it because it's not something that was established with me as a kid.
Mm-hmm. See, I was opposite, probably because my dad was military. Um, so schedules and keeping time frames was paramount for my family. Um, like especially Monday through Friday was, with school and everything else. Saturday was typically reserved for relaxing, and then we also did like most of the household chores
Mm-hmm.
and like all the yard work. And then Sunday was Sunday school, church, and then at least once a month we'd go meet up with like my great grandparents and grandparents. And that was just a structural thing that I had for almost 12, 13 years of just a constant thing for us.
Yeah, for me, I've worked on getting into the habit to where like during the week I try to have a consistent schedule, but it's a little
Mm-hmm.
bit hard with my, fiance's job because he's constantly doing a rotating shift.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes it, I'm still like working and figuring out how to have a consistent like schedule or routine with
Mm-hmm.
that, like trying to find one that works well with that because be getting up at the same time, doing things around like cooking it around the same times and stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, it's like I also have to plan, I have to plan around him as well. So,
Right.
and because his schedule is like constantly changing and all over the place, it's a little difficult. I
Yeah.
will say it is pretty difficult.
Yeah, it can be. That is one of the things about with the rotating shifts, or shifts that are just unpredictable, especially with the military, is you tend to, well, if you want to, of course, um, shift your schedule as best you can to accommodate theirs. And it's, I mean, depending on what you're doing also with your life, um, like if you're working part time or whatever to help with the bills or all that,
Hmm.
then it can really mess things up, or um, the sleep schedules always get mixed up too if there's rotating shifts.
Yeah, well,
Um,
that's why I decided to, because I was working a full time job,
mhm,
and then it was mainly just a temporary thing
mhm,
to pay off some debts that I owed, and then now I'm doing, um, like technically I'm a contractor. So, but the nice thing about it is that I work when I need or want to. So when
right.
it's convenient for me. And, I can choose, when I work, how much I work. I'm in control of it. And it makes it a lot easier for me because especially now at this point in my life, I'm kind of shifting from, you know, working full time and everything to wanting to be more at home
Mhm.
and, taking care of him and taking care of the house and, other things like that. So I'm not really like career focused anymore. Like I kind of just don't care anymore.
Right.
And I guess it goes back to that commitment thing where it's like I can't commit myself to a full-time job anymore. Like I've always struggled committing myself to a full-time job. Like even though I enjoyed what I was doing and stuff,
Mhm.
I just hated I guess the rigidness of it and like the fact that it was kind of like involuntary, I guess. Like you had to be at work at a certain time. You had to take your breaks at a certain time. Like you had to do everything a certain way, and it was so structured and so rigid, and it was like I had a really hard time with that. Like I liked having the freedom to be able to do the things that I wanted and needed to do, but at the same time knowing that I wasn't like being forced or pressured to do it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
maybe that's like part of the reason why women have commitment issues is because maybe it's like an issue with authority or something. I don't know.
Um, I don't know. I feel like for most women, it's more so women are told that we need to disregard authority, in particular male authority. But then they preach about, of course, respecting the authority of your boss. But I think there is, I don't know, maybe because it's ingrained. I think it could be like ingrained in women in general. Like every woman I know that is working and has children, if they've all said the exact same thing. If I had the option, like financially, I would be home with my children. I would not be working. I don't want to work. I don't want to deal with this. I want to be home. Um, and I think that's, I think that does come back to the commitment because I think though for women as well, if we're talking about women and commitment, there's also that biological aspect to it too, where you know not removing feminism out of the equation. If we remove feminism out of the equation, I think biologically women, as a rule, as a general rule that's kept our species alive, is women have had their commitment to their children and to their spouse, to their small little society that they had. And now it's the commitment is, well, not only do you have to have the commitment of, now society is telling women, or feminism is telling women, that not only do you have the commitment of, you know, if you want to do the horrible thing of having a house and children, you also now have to commit your 40 plus hours a week at a job. And I think that's confusing women on, what we biologically, I think, lean naturally towards, and then what feminism is forcing women towards in regards to commitment. Like it's literally like kind of, it's separate. It's like literally cutting women in half and forcing them to try to commit to both things.
Yeah, it's like it's a lot. Like I know whenever my senior year in high school, like they really pushed going to college on us. Like they
Mm-hmm.
pushed it really, really hard. And I remembered when I went to college, I honestly just wasn't interested. Like college for me was just, it was kind of boring, but at the same time, it was like I just graduated high school. I've been in school now for, you know, what is it, 14 years. And it's like I'm tired of going to school. Like I'm tired of having to do this. Like I just didn't want to do it anymore. So
Mhm.
I pretty much only took the classes that I really like needed, and
Mhm.
then that was it. Like after that I was kind of done, or just
Right.
classes that, cuz I ended up also taking a couple of business classes as well.
Mhm.
Um and then that was pretty much it. It's like I couldn't dedicate myself to the whole degree. I just
Mm.
couldn't. I was like, it's too expensive. And a lot of the information that they were teaching us was stuff that I already knew from working in the field already, or it's just stuff that I was never going to use in the field because it was in aspects that I don't do.
Right.
So,
Well,
and I wonder, like, when it comes to commitment, a lot of it having to do with childhood.
yeah, one of the articles that I sent you earlier, it actually brought up um, women and commitment and how our childhood affects that in our later years, and especially with relationships. Um, it actually talked about women who grow up with in single parent homes, particular single mother homes. It talked about women who grow up in, if there is any type of abuse, whether that be physical, emotional, or even sexual abuse. It also brought up the relationship that women have with their fathers when they're growing up. And then it also brought up the early on the relationships that they saw between their mothers and their fathers. And of course, if they did have a single parent home, like was the father, or if they lived simply with one parent and only saw one, on the weekends or whatever, what type of relationship did they have with that other parent? And those were like some of the main classifications on why, or when they were doing the study. I believe it was the Bureau of Labor and Labor Statistics, the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics. They were stating like that that's where oh, I'm sorry, it may not have been the labor and statistics. It may have been it was a different study, but they were talking about how all of those factors play into commitment phobia for women, and then also their fear, and then also um, because also, and they also talked about promiscuous behavior as well, and women who have more promiscuous behavior, and obviously they're now damaging their ability to pair bond, which also damages their ability to commit, and that they start learning how to, or they tell themselves to quote unquote settle, so that way they can fulfill some type, or as they get older, so that way they can fill some type of um, oh gosh, how do they word it? Um, hey, Bandit. So that way, they could actually like, oh shoot, I just lost my train of thought on that one. But anyways, going back to the other part though, with promiscuous behavior, pair bonding, relationships of fathers, childhood relationships, childhood trauma, all of that affects women in a different way than it affects men, and their
Mhm.
commitment issues and their pair bonding. And Bandit says, I could really talk about this one. Yeah.
Yeah, like I feel like, because kids are very observant even from a very young age. Like they really, even if you're in the other room, like they can still pick up on what's going on. Like I
Mhm.
feel like especially in today's society, at least here, I don't know what it is, but it seems like our society is treating kids like they're stupid, like they're getting dumber and dumber, and are treating them that way, and kids really aren't. They're very observant, and they really
Um,
they really pick up on things you would think that they wouldn't notice or wouldn't be able to understand. And even if they don't understand it in that moment, when they get older and they start, thinking back on it, like they're gonna pick up on things. Like if you grew up in a home where your parents were like constantly like screaming and yelling at each other and arguing with each other, the kid's gonna think that whenever there's a problem, that's how you address it. Like that's how you deal with those types of situations. And um, when they become an adult, they see that behavior, and so they grow up thinking that that's the way that you address situations, or that's the way that you deal with certain emotions. And even with commitment, like if you grow up in a single parent household, especially like with a single mother, and they're constantly, have a revolving door with guys, all these different guys coming in and out all the time,
Mhm.
you're going to pick up on that as a kid. And then once you get older, you're going to start noticing that, you're going to have the same issues too, where it's just a revolving door and you can't, and some of them think that's kind of acceptable or normal,
Mhm.
because growing up, that's all that they knew. They didn't know that that's not normal. That's not the way things are supposed to be done. But when you grow up in that kind of household and that's all you see, that's all you're going to know.
Mhm. I do want to state though one thing. Working in education, um, I would actually say that for the kids that are in middle school to high school, those are the ones who are usually represented as being like quote unquote dumb. And I've noticed that with the little ones, elementary age, I've I've noticed I noticed personally a lot of parents put too much pressure on them and expected them to act like adults. And it was a weird dynamic when I switched from high school to elementary that I noticed that the older kids were being treated like as they were stupid, but then the younger ones, and we're talking little, like kindergarten, first grade, where they're expected to process and handle strong emotions. And a lot of times, the single mothers, because I dealt with a lot of the single mothers, um, were like, "Oh, you're fine. Just deal with it. Just you'll be fine. You'll be fine." And there was no actually healthy balance on that. So I would say for working in the educational field, that was one thing I did notice in regards to those two things. Hey, Outlaw. A Bandit, though, does have a question for us. He asks, a quick question. Who has more commitment problems in general, men or women?
I would honestly probably say women do, just because of the fact that, like, at least from what I know, is that men generally are are committed, like kind of naturally. They naturally commit themselves to things, and when they do, they kind of put their all into it. Versus a lot of the times with women, we'll start off putting our all into it, and then after a while, we kind of just it becomes too, what's the word, monotonous, and we kind of just get, I guess, like bored of it, or we just are tired of the repetitiveness of it. And so we want change. We want something different. We want to do something different. Like, I know, for example, a lot of the female content creators that I used to watch on YouTube, a lot of them aren't around anymore. They only were around for a couple years and then they drop off. Or
Mm-hmm.
like even in career aspects, like one of the statistics that I was reading was that on average, women tend to have more career changes than men. I think for women, it's like five, like 5 point, like they have a 5.1% more likelihood of having a career change and hold a career on average for like 3 years, versus men, it's like 5 to 10 years. And they tend to not change much throughout that career. They usually stay within the same positions that they're in.
Yeah, I believe that study said men are 10% more likely to stick with a job for up to 10 plus years compared to women.
Yeah. Like women just it like we want constant change, and I think that's more so like we're just used to there being constant change. So when things become stagnant after a while, it's like it starts to bother us. Cause like I know like for me growing up, like things were always changing around me. But I also grew up in a
Mm.
broken home. So, especially after my father passed, I was getting passed around from home to home to home, to different family members, all over the state. Um at the same time was also the time that I was, growing up. I was going through my teens, and so, like, my body was changing, my habits were changing. Like, I started, wanting to get into, wanting to do my hair, wanting to do makeup, to wear different clothes. Like, there was things were constantly changing for me growing up. And I think it's like that for a lot of women. I think there are a lot of women out there, especially who grow up in broken homes, where they're so used to things changing all the time. And so, because they're so used to that change, that when things become still, it starts to get to them. Like they don't know they don't know how to handle it, because it's like, they were so used to things changing all the time that now that they're not changing anymore, it's kind of like they just it's maybe it's a fear of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're so used to things changing that now that things are still, like you don't know what's going to happen. Like, are things going to suddenly change again, or are they going to stay like this?
Yeah. You and I definitely, we had very different upbringings where I had, um, I did have a very stable, very more guidelines growing up where, like I told you before, like we had Monday through Friday was quite literally scheduled. Saturdays was Saturday mornings. We could watch Saturday morning cartoons, breakfast, and then it was household and outdoor chores. Sunday was Sunday school, mass, and then once or twice a month we'd go hang out with my great grandparents or grandparents. And so I had that level of stability that I think a lot of women currently, or the women that have grown up, do not. But to go back to Bandit's question, who has more commitment problems in general, I would actually also extend that to answer it for myself, or in general, I guess I should say. I would say as well that more so women, and I think that it actually extends also from the lack of fathers in the home that we're seeing, and then also, of course, the promiscuous behavior that is being heavily promoted, and that promiscuous behavior affects the woman's ability to pair bond. And if women cannot pair bond, then they do not commit. And so I think that plays a massive role into women and commitment. And no fathers in the home, promiscuous behavior. It's a sign for that can be, obviously, and it has shown that that is literally destroying women the world over. He does ask, so if women have more commitment problems and benefit the most out of divorce, why do we as a culture incentivize bad behavior, promote bad behavior?
Because I guess because it makes the state a lot of money. Like divorces do make the state, like divorces, child support, all that stuff is essentially the state monopolizing off of that. Like, I don't, I like, at least to me, anyways, I don't think it's, I think the reason why it's become culturally accepted is because we've been convinced that it's an acceptable thing. Because, you know, if you go back, like, way before I was even thought of, like, probably before my parents were even thought of, that wasn't a normal thing. Like, divorces were not normal. You know, child support and being a single parent was not a normal thing. And so when the state realized how profitable it could be, though, they knew that they had to normalize it somehow. So they had to start, you know, especially when the feminist movement came along, and you know, the divorce rates and single parent households and everything really started to jump up. The state realized, like, hey, we can make a lot of money off of this. I mean, I don't know if it's possible to pass legislation to, you know, outlaw divorce or child support or anything. It'd probably be really hard to do, to be honest, because
Mm.
it's so profitable for our government. I mean, they make billions off of it. It's absolutely insane. But see, they don't make a lot of money off of marriages, though.
Right. Yeah. And he does say, though, my point is we promoted female nature at the expense of men, and that something is broken if you want change for change's sake, and because that's basically a fear of stability.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. It's just a fear of stability because, you know, you're not used to it. You know,
Yeah.
you're so used to everything changing all the time that it's a hard thing to adjust to. Like, I know for me personally, like, it was a really hard thing for me to adjust to for a while
Mm.
because growing up, like, I was so used to moving around all the time and going to different schools and having different friends and living in different places and
Mm.
all this stuff that when I graduated high school and I was no longer in that situation and I was on my own, it was a lot for me to adjust to because it was like, you know, I wanted change, but at the same time I'm like, why change it if it's not broken? You know, is there any, there's like nothing wrong here. You know, like, I'm fine here.
Hmm.
And it took some counseling and it took some therapy and it took, you know, it took support from my friends and other people to learn how to accept stability and how to stay stable.
See, I think I have a hard time. Like I can see how that can affect the mind and how people can respond to that. Um, but I think I have a fear of not being stable because I was very blessed. I do consider myself very blessed because I did have a very solid foundation growing up and still do. Um, you know, with my parents and with my family and with my husband and even my in-laws, like extended family as well. And so to me it's it's almost like I want to ask the question to other women, like, why wouldn't you want to be stable? Why wouldn't you, like, it boggles my mind because
Like, it's a weird thing. It's like, it's not that I don't want to be stable,
Mhm.
but when I am stable, it starts to make me anxious
Huh.
because I'm so, like, I'm anticipating the change. So then when the change doesn't come, it's kind of like I don't know what to do. because it's nothing's changing, everything's staying the same. Like what do I do? Because I'm anticipating that change because I'm so used to it happening that when it doesn't happen, it's like it's like a relief at but at the same time it's also like scary. Like I'm glad that I'm not in the situation that I used to be,
Right.
but sometimes I know that I still desire to have something changing. Like, and I've learned to kind of do small things to kind of
Mhm.
help satisfy that, like make setting aside the time to do like a road trip over the weekend or something, or maybe changing up what I make for breakfast in the morning, or maybe changing up changing up my routine a little bit so then it doesn't become too monotonous, but at the same time I'm still stable. Like it's a difficult thing to navigate through.
Um, I mean, yeah, I think we were definitely opposites on this one because I love stability so much where if I could, like, I will literally write out my day on what I need to get done and by what time so I can be most efficient to get everything done. And that gives me a sense of joy, like to be able to do that. And obviously, like, I understand, like, I can, change things up. Um, but yeah, I think it's good to hear because then it's like, okay, well then obviously there are many women who um, did grow up with um, in a single family home or broken homes, or tragedy struck where they did lose a parent and things like that. And that definitely shapes people and their fear of commitment, their fear of stability, always expecting the rug to be pulled out from under them kind of deal. Um, Bandit does say, I can answer the stability thing because nothing about a woman is stable by design. Keeping up with the Joneses, looks, media advertising, there's no stability for a woman. This is the biggest thing a man gives a woman, it's stability and a foundation. And
Yeah.
I've always heard that phrase. I remember like and I know this is probably an old phrase and I've seen people repeat it many times, but I have heard like my mom say it, my great grandmother said it. Um, a man gives you a house, the woman will make it a home. A man
Mhm.
provides the food, the woman makes the meal. And it is that foundation of it as well that
Right.
he's providing the main resources, and when the woman uses her hands to hope, if she's a good woman, create something out of that.
Yeah.
Um, so, and I think that's interesting though, tying that stability and commitment together. I don't think I really looked at that earlier today when we were kind of sharing our stuff back and forth, like different articles that we were sharing. That stability definitely plays a big part in women's commitments. And one of the articles I sent you, the woman was talking about her fear of commitments and how she broke up with a great guy that she absolutely loved because she was so afraid of being, quote unquote, tied down to him. And then she said that she finally discovered it was, it's an opinion piece from her. And she was saying how she finally discovered where her commitment phobia came from and all of her fears. And she had a few more healthy relationships. And then she finally went back to the one guy that she truly loved. And it was just like, it reminded me of what we're really seeing a lot today of the women who kind of just repeatedly go through men
Mm-hmm.
um, almost until they hit like a certain age, and then they're like, oh my gosh, maybe I should go back to so and so, or maybe I should, um, maybe I should just settle right now and go for this, and that way I can get this stability or this, exactly what I need right now. And then a lot of times you do find that those ones end up getting a divorce as well, later on.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason why, like, especially like in today's society, where you start
Hmm.
seeing a lot more of like middle-aged women just, they've been in these marriages like 20, 30 years, and then all of a sudden it's like they just snap and
Hmm.
they like lose it, and they completely destroyed everything that they've had. And it's, the biggest question is always, why, like,
Hmm.
why would you do that? You had a
You had
nice
everything.
house, you had a good career, like, you had a loyal husband, like, you had kids, you had all of this stuff, and you just threw it all away for what? For change, to
For
to
change.
change something, because
I
it's
think that goes to, though, like, I remember, or yesterday, um, like I said, I've heard this in MGTOW community, red pill communities, where that phrase of, uh, men are islands and women's are boats, and if a better, or what they view as a better opportunity, like they think the grass is greener on the other side, plenty of women will, quote unquote, jump ship to
Mhm.
try to get those greener pastures. And it's always the exact same story of, it wasn't the greener pastures, and now I'm stuck with nothing. Now I have nothing.
Right.
um, and yeah, they destroy their families, they destroy, their husbands, they destroy themselves in the whole process. And I think once you get to that point, you never actually return, you never get back.
Right.
It's it's a done deal at that point. um
I think
hmm.
I think teaching women, especially young women, to learn how to be content with the things that they have.
Hmm.
Like, a lot of women just are not content. Like, they constantly, are nitpicking everything. Like, the moment that something, that they see something, they start like obsessing over it, even if it's like the smallest thing. And it's just something as simple as, like, having a, simple conversation about it. But instead of doing that, they want to take this little thing and make it this huge deal. Like, they freak out over it, and it's
Well, and it does go back. I'm glad Bandit brought up that phrase, keeping up with the Joneses. um I have seen, many women, and especially when my husband was military, military wise in particular, are some of the worst I have ever encountered. Um, it's the idea of, well, I'm going to create this perfect picture scenario. I'm going to create this picture perfect family, marriage, everything else. And they're so focused on creating this picture perfect thing that they actually forget to create a healthy family and a healthy marriage, um, and that healthy covenant with their husband. And everything just begins to fall apart. And then now they're comparing themselves to other women who are putting on this facade of another picture perfect family. And they're like, well, if she's doing that, I could probably do better. And I can do, maybe if I just got rid of him, I could do better. Maybe, and there's women that have even, literally just dropped their own children and said, oh, I want to live a different life without them. I'd be better off without them. And it's the idea of they're following other women, in a sense, almost it's like, following down to the road of hell, essentially, because they're
like
willing to discard everything that actually means something.
Like women have become very competitive with each other, which to me is kind of weird because women naturally aren't meant to be competitive.
No.
So it's like one of those things where it's like, and
well,
I
our
feel like
competition is different than when we think of competition, because I think normally we think of like competitive behavior, we usually link that towards
like sports,
male competitive, well, not just that, but male competitive behavior, where women, our competition is more
sabotage.
yeah, more sabotage, more so of it's almost it's a vain competition in a way. It's full of vanity, really.
Yeah,
It's
and
realistically,
jealousy
and jealousy,
and
yeah.
it's kind of like I don't like to me I don't think it's necessarily a I wouldn't say it's necessarily a bad thing, but at the same time it's like I think a lot of women view it in the wrong way. Like if you see a woman who, has a happy marriage or, has, the things that you desire, instead of saying, oh, I could do better than her, maybe instead of saying like, what is it that she does that I can do to help improve my situation?
Right.
And working together to make a better situation versus trying to sabotage and compete with each other and just to end up causing a lot of mayhem and hurt.
Yeah. Yep. And then going back to the whole idea of commitment and stability, though, is that when we do that to each other, we also shake it's like the women try to destroy that foundation that the women have, which creates a lack of stability and commitment for that woman now, and it's like we're creating our own demons with other women.
Yeah, like to me, I feel like social media has a huge influence on that.
Oh, social media is the worst thing
It
for
has
women.
such a huge influence on that because you see these women on social media and stuff, and you're like, you become envious and also kind of jealous, and then it makes you want to do those things, and then before you know it, it's just an absolute shit show. Like it gets ridiculous. Like I would say Instagram and TikTok are probably the two worst ones for that.
Well, and then also too, both of them promote. I don't have social media, so I mean, of course, like you've seen people that do, like, the dumb people of TikTok or narcissism of TikToks, and I've seen those videos. One gentleman I watch is Odin's Men on YouTube, and he'll do that. And one of the things, like, and Casual Bachelor will pull up some of that stuff too. And one of the things that I have noticed too is that even on these social media platforms, you have women telling other women it's okay to cheat. It's okay to like there's no such thing as a slut. There's no such thing as, anything like, hot girl summer, girl, get your game on. And it's just that behavior, and they're heavily promoting it. And it's this they're literally helping women are helping women destroy ourselves. And it's destroying our ability to pair bond. It's destroying our ability to seek stability, seek commitment, look for healthy relationships. In fact, one of the articles I sent you, the one girl said there's like signs of commitment phobias, and she said that one of the signs is that women who they'll say, oh, I want a healthy relationship, oh, I'd like to get married and have kids, but then all they do is date essentially the same guy repeatedly, obviously like different guys, but they're the exact same type of personality, the exact same personas, and they just keep repeating the same type of relationships over and over again, and then turn around and blame the guys instead of actually taking accountability for themselves and their actions. But they're like, oh no, it's just the guy's fault. I had no you know,
Yeah,
no
it's like women fail to look at the common denominator in all those relationships,
them,
which was them.
just
And I
them.
think, like, I don't know what it is, but some women just have a really hard time admitting when they're at fault, when they're wrong. Like, they have a
Mm-hmm.
hard time looking at themselves and saying, what's wrong with me? Like, what is going on? Like, why am I like this? Like,
Yep.
maybe I should seek help for this.
Yep.
This obviously isn't normal. Like, why am I this way? And instead of turning to these other women that you envy and are wanting to compete with, instead look for women to help you in those situations, to help you get what you want. Like, if you want to have a long lasting marriage and you want to have stability in your relationship, then you need to find women who have those things and talk to them. Find women who have been married for 10, 20, 30 years, especially like elderly women.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're the best ones to talk to because they've been through it all. Like, they've seen shit. Like, they know. Like, take the time to go, find them, talk to them, and find the people that have the things that you want, and just sit down and talk to them and saying, what do I need to do to obtain those things? How do you do it? So
Right.
then I can learn to know how to do it for myself.
But on the thing is though is that type of when women do try to promote that, or um do like either create uh women's groups for that, or if they do any type of podcast or anything like that, they become demonized by the feminist women because now it's, oh, you want to set women back. So it's again it's women who destroy women, it's women who drag women down, and it's the um excuse me, it's the like I that was one of the things like I was actually told before I got married was surround yourself with women who value marriage and who want to see you and your husband succeed. And I believe it was my mother-in-law, she told me that one of the hardest things to do in a marriage is to say the words, I was wrong and I'm sorry. And especially like when you believe, in your heart of hearts, you're like, I was right. And she said sometimes, she goes and she told me, and she said sometimes it's not about being right, it's about your love for your marriage, for your covenant, for your husband, and saying my love for you is greater than being right. And that was one of the best advice I was ever given. um and I love my mother-in-law, and her and my father-in-law have been married, I think celebrated 42 years 2 months ago. And and but for her, because she was she was a stay-at-home mom, she homeschooled her children. She had a very small knit community. and she was not very welcomed by other moms outside of that community because of the way that she wanted to live her marriage and live with and raise her children and her family. And even then, she was experiencing that in the 80s and 90s. And so, this all goes down to, we can always go back to childhood trauma regarding stability and commitment. We can, oh, okay. We can always, go back to promiscuous behavior. But at the end of the day, I think also one of the biggest factors is women destroying women on that. And then Bandit, I don't know if he's still here, but he said, it's why marriage has a dowry attached to it. It's to prevent or cover loss when the wife leaves because it's a way to cover human nature. Only way women will settle is if a man forces her to be and she has no option to move out. And then he said, it's why the father passes the daughter to the husband because a man has to be there to keep her in check or she will end up destroying her life. Oh, the feminist will not like you for that one, Bandit.
Yeah, no. I think, like, honestly, like, I know when I started living with the people who I call my parents now, it was very different for me because, like, my biological dad he wasn't super strict with me. I mean, I didn't really do like whatever I wanted, but he wasn't super like rigid or strict with me or anything. He was a lot more laid back. And when I started living with my adoptive parents, they are very old school. Because my dad was Navy, and then my adoptive father, he was Army, and it was so different for me. It was like two different, completely different sides because he taught me a lot about, like, respecting men and respecting authority. Like, if you address him, you have to say yes sir, no sir. Like, if he called you, you better come in there. You better not try to talk over him or talk back to him. Like, he didn't tolerate any of that stuff.
Dad
And
only
he
called
still
me.
doesn't to this day. Like, he does not tolerate it. And I mean, he wasn't afraid to get the belt out and whoop your ass. He didn't care how old you he doesn't care how old you are. He'll do it. Like, he does not tolerate that. And um like, I wasn't in particular, like, I was never like a bad kid or anything. I wasn't ever like super disrespectful, but there were things that he taught me that, like, kind of caught me on a couple times, like, saying what, like, responding to him and stuff. And he would just have to give me that look, like, excuse me, you know? And, and honestly, I feel like it was, like, really important for me because that's where I started, like, learning a lot about stability and structure because he kept me in check. Like, he kept me in check, he kept me stable. He made sure that I was doing the things that needed to get done and learning to respect his authority, and not so much out of fear but out of trust. Because as long as I trusted him and respected him, he never led me wrong. He's never led me wrong. He's never misguided me. He's never mistreated me. Like, he was always there for me. He always made sure that we had things that we needed. So
Well,
learning that, I feel like, was really important for me, especially coming from the background that I was coming from, where I didn't have that. Like, I didn't have that stability. I didn't have really any authority in my life. So being put in that situation, like, at first it was sucked. Like, I hated it, but after a while I grew to understand it. and actually liking it, because I knew that, he was always going to be there for me, and he's still there for me this day.
Right. And that's a blessing. Um, having that, it's seriously true that daughters do love how their fathers love them. And, we do look for men who remind us of the most important men in our lives, who in the beginning should be our fathers. And so having that it's so important. It's vital. It's vital
Yeah.
to women. It's
It's
vital to our success in life. It's vital to the type of relationships we will have, the marriage that we will have. I mean, I couldn't, I, like, it breaks my heart when I had quite a few friends who, one of my friends, her father sadly died when she was 10 years old. Um, and so, she lost that part of her life. And when her and I became friends, we were about 12, and she just latched onto my dad. She literally called my dad dad. My dad taught her how to change her oil. He taught her how to change her tire. Whenever she needed something, she didn't go to her mom. She came to my parents. And, um, when she was around my family, she was a lot more stable. And her, because my dad would literally, you know, correct her on things, correct her on behavior. Because my dad wasn't going to stand for any type of bad behavior. He didn't, I mean, my dad was a first sergeant. He's not going to deal with any of that. And so, but she loved it. It was like she kept coming back for more. And when she would
yeah.
introduce him to people, she'd be like, "Oh, this is my dad." And
Yeah.
people would kind of look at her because they're like, "Are you sure?" Because she's,
That's how it was for
um,
me, because, my adoptive parents, they're an interracial couple, so my dad's black. And
hmm,
so a lot of the times when I would, say, "Oh, that's my dad," they give me like the weirdest look, like, "What?" How are you, pale as snow, related to this man? You know?
yeah,
So, but I mean, to me, like, a lot of women view that as, being, it's oppressive to women, it's controlling women, and it's honestly, it's really not. Like, I know, like I said, when I first was in that household, like, it was hard for me because I wasn't used to it, and I was like, it's super strict here, like, I can't do anything, all this other stuff. But after a while, I grew to appreciate it, because having that stability made it to where I didn't really have to worry about anything. I didn't have to worry about the next meal I was going to have. I didn't have to
mhm,
worry about, I didn't have to worry about anything. As long as if I followed him, he would lead me,
right,
and he would never lead me wrong.
right,
And I think that's something that I feel like is an important thing for a lot of women to understand, is learning to respect their authority, not because they're trying to oppress you or because they're trying to be controlling of you or be abusive.
hmm,
They're doing it to guide you,
yeah,
because it's a terrifying thing going into the world with no one to lead you, all by yourself. That is
yeah. I
not an easy thing to do, and it's a dangerous thing to do. So, finding
mm,
somebody to trust to lead you through that, and knowing that as long as you respect him, he'll provide for you. He
right,
he'll give you the whole fucking world, as long as you respect and trust him. But if you
yeah,
don't do that, then that's not going to happen. And
yeah,
you're going to have to rely on yourself to do those things. And for women, that's a hard thing to do, because we have a hard time committing ourselves to things. So, committing ourselves to having to be the provider and everything is that's an unnatural and very difficult thing for us to do.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like I said though, you and I definitely have very different experiences. I went from my parents' home to my husband's home, and so I did have that stability. Like, I mean, I still call my dad multiple times a week sometimes just to, because I'm like, Dad, I need to, like, what's going on with this, or how do I handle this, or what do I do here? And and having that and knowing that like my parents have always said to all of us, like my siblings and I, we will always be here for you. It doesn't matter how old you are. You will always be our children. We will always love you. We're always here for you. You can, you know, like when I think of home, I don't think of a house. I think of the people that are my home. Like my husband's my home. My sister's off visiting my parents right now, and she's like, "Oh, it's nice being home." And what she means is that she's with our parents. That's home for her too. And obviously her husband is her home, but we still see our parents as well as that's our home, like our family's our home.
Right.
And actually
Home is where
Outlaw,
family is.
yeah, and Outlaw does say some people, he's in reference to you, some people who come into our lives transcend blood. Family don't end with blood. And then Bandit asks, who teaches a woman stability, a man or woman? And then he says, the point I'm making is if men teach stability and women today have no stability, why do women keep men away from their children or from their kids when it's shown the only way you fix this is having men in kids' lives? And then he says, women create the problem, then blame men for the crappy decisions. Sorry, Bandit. I'm going to say crappy there. They make, and then hate men for not being in the kids' lives, yet creating a child that will have the same net results as you. If you want stability, I'm sorry, it's like a giant slap in the face as a man. If you want stability, a man must lead. And if a man leads, then the woman has to submit. It means the woman must pick the men they will submit to, and the man has to lead alone and take the hard decisions on their own and lead the best way they can. Men learn leadership from their dad, and men teach stability to daughters.
Yeah, and part of that too goes back to, and I know like a lot of women nowadays don't do this, but it's really, honestly, women could avoid so many shitty relationships if they bring the man home to meet their fathers. If you have a father at home like I did, you bring them back to meet them because they're the ones who they want to make sure that their daughters go to somebody who is going to care for and provide for them. So bringing them home to be vetted through your dad is a good thing because they're going to look at him and see are you going to be able to provide stability and lead my daughter, because
Mm-hmm.
if not you can get the hell out of here.
Oh
But
yeah. Oh, I still remember when I asked my husband to meet my parents, and then specifically I said my dad. I was like, my mom will love you. I was like, my mom is not a hard person to please. It's my dad, and I said my dad will give you a massive side eye, and he's he's not gonna trust you with his youngest daughter. I was like, just expect that. There may be guns involved. Just letting you know. I was like, just this is just the way it is. And my husband was so gracious about it, and I think because
i
we both
almost
came from that military
I
background
almost
too.
think, I don't know if this is true, but I almost feel like the gun thing is like a test. Like it's a test that
Yeah.
men give each other. Like if you were in a situation with my daughter and another man had a gun and you were unarmed, what would you do? Would you do the smart thing and listen to what he says, or are you gonna try and be defiant? Like I feel
Um,
like it's like almost like a psychological test.
no, I think my dad was more so of I mean, he's literally like my sister had a couple of boyfriends in high school. Obviously, nothing serious. Just she could we couldn't. My sister couldn't date till she was 16, so she had her first boyfriend at 16, and it was more so my dad explaining to the guy that she brought home that he's not afraid to go to prison if this man messes with my daughter, like messes with her. And so I think it was more that compared to a
Yeah. Like
more
it
of a
keeps the
dominant.
guys with bad intentions away.
Yeah, it does. And then we have an older brother too. And so my brother would be standing there, and my brother is like a buff dude. He's a tough he's such a sweetheart, but for some reason people are scared of him. I don't know why, because he is so sweet and he has dad jokes down to a T. He's a father of 3, so it's like, paramount he has that. But obviously before that though, he would be standing right beside my dad, and my dad literally brought out a couple of his guns on my sister's first date, and he told her, he goes, that boy better walk up to the door and ring the doorbell, and he better come inside to get you. If not, this date is off. Like, this is a requirement. And it just kind of like, that was how my dad rolled. And he did the same thing for me. I mean, the only boyfriend I brought home was my husband. I never had a boyfriend before him, so that was my husband. So yeah, I mean, to me, for my dad, for the gun thing, it was more so of, he was reminding the guy that he's not afraid to go to prison, and he will do whatever he needs to defend his daughter.
Right. And it's
Our
like
daughters.
a lot of like, especially when it comes to daughters and their fathers, having a father, like mine, which I'm really grateful to have because, he didn't have to be my dad, but
Mm-hmm.
he insisted on it. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm really glad that he did because I really don't know what I would have done without him. But when you have a father who provides you stability
Mm-hmm.
and you trust to lead you and not steer you wrong,
Mm-hmm.
to me, like especially when I started dating, because I didn't start dating till I was 16, and it helps so much because you avoid a lot of like shitty relationships with just bad guys, guys that don't have good intentions or guys that are just, you know, looking for a quickie and stuff. So, having them to have to run by, your fathers makes it to where you avoid those types of situations and you know that the guy that you're with is someone that you can trust.
Mm-hmm.
Because if your father trusts them, then you can trust them because your father's never going to lead you wrong.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. And um, yeah, it's a comfort. It's such a comfort to know that you have that, and that you're protected. Um, and it's such a blessing to those who do have it. I do want to say this though. Bandit did mention as well that divorce creates a multi-generational problem that, if not corrected, can ruins your family tree. Only way to fix it is near impossible road. So really think about what you're doing in divorce. It's a multi-generational problem you created for women who divorce. Problem you created because it teaches the kids they can leave when things get rough. It also means that the government gets all your multi-generational wealth because you can't pass the wealth to the kids. It goes to the government and takes a few generations to recoup the loss. This is the crutch of it. If you don't have stability, don't date. If you don't have stability, don't date and destroy families and future generations. The damage is really that bad. And a woman without stability should be looked at as a man with no money. Do you agree with
Yeah,
me?
like yeah, divorce has a lot of serious consequences, and not just for the mother and father, but the whole family and their kids, their grandkids. Like it messes a lot of stuff up. Like
Hmm.
it ruins a lot of things. And
Yep.
I think part of that too is also having a good mother as well. Like,
Hmm.
my mother, she taught me to never give up. Like she would not, if I if I ever said that, like, I don't want to do this anymore, or I give up, it's too hard, she would tell me no. She's like, "No. You're going to do it until it's done. Keep
Hmm.
doing it. Keep trying it. Do it over and over and over again. It doesn't matter how many times, you keep doing it." And she taught me how to be persistent, and to work through things and to not give up when things
Right.
get hard. And I feel like that's, an important quality that a lot more women need to be taught,
Yeah.
having, and I feel like that's a good lesson that's taught through their mothers,
Yep.
is learning how to be persistent and to do things even when things get tough. You don't give up. You keep doing it and you keep working through it, and it'll pass and you will get through it. And that's
Hmm.
something that my adoptive mother taught me, was to
Right.
be persistent and to keep working at it until
Yeah.
you succeed.
Yep. Like one of the my mother-in-law, I talk to my mother-in-law a lot and my mom, and that was one of the biggest things too. My mom has always said as well is that um, she has always stressed that she goes, you don't just have a marriage, you have a covenant. And she goes, and you cannot break a covenant. And she goes, so regardless of what storms, what trials, what tribulations you come across, she goes, if you need help, reach out. She goes, but you need to stand firm. You need to understand what you have committed yourself to. And that's something like my mom met my dad at 17 and she was married by 18. And that's just something, and I've asked her, I was like, have like how did you know dad was the one? And she goes, I something just like she goes, I went on our first date. She goes, I remember he dropped me off. I went inside and your grandma was sitting there, waiting for me to come home. And your grandma asked me how it went, and all I said was, "That's the man I'm going to marry." And 6 months later, my dad proposed, and 6 months after that, they were married. And she said it's that it's that commitment, that decision that this is the man that you've decided to spend your life with, and you fight tooth and nail, and you do not give up on him, and you don't give up on your marriage. And my mother-in-law has the same. God, I love my mother-in-law. She's such a blessing too. And she thankfully has that same mindset. And so like if I have any questions, if I can't get a hold of my mom, I call my mother-in-law. And I know I'm getting sound advice. I know I'm getting biblical advice. And I know I'm getting advice that's meant from a place of love and a place that wants to see her son and me, her daughter-in-law, succeed. And I think a lot of women do not have that, and that's sad. And I try to for other women that are married. I tried that with a couple of army wives that were young and recently married at the time. I tried to reach out to them, offer some guidance or assistance wherever I could. Some took it, some didn't, and I always reached out as well to older women because obviously there's always things that we can learn from others. We can always get better. And I think, let's see. So Bandit says if you really look at marriage, it's the father literally handing off the daughter to the new man, aka the husband. The symbolic thing is you're passing stability, accountability, and leadership to the husband. He says, I'm not trying to be old school, but this is why things are done this way, because it was known even back then that men are passing the torch of leadership from man to man. Men have all the historical responsibility. Women are liberated from the responsibility, and you wonder why marriage is in the toilet. It's hard to make decisions when you worry if my woman is thinking of leaving me. It makes men possessive so they don't leave. Not saying it's right, but now you know why. If women want stability, the best advice I can give you is to let a man lead and understand we are not equal. We are equally compatible with responsibility. Men are leaders of the household.
Yeah, like we each have our own, like I feel like that's one of the things that a lot of women misunderstand is that you your man leads, but you both have your own responsibilities. When
Hmm.
he's leading, you're walking behind him.
Yeah.
You're also supporting him at the same time while he's supporting you. He gives you a house, you take that house and you make it a home.
Right.
He gives you groceries, you take those groceries and you make them into meals.
Hmm.
you know he gives you kids, you take those kids and you provide him a family.
Hmm.
That's it's they're different roles, but they have the same responsibilities. You're both caring and providing for each other, and you're building
Hmm.
off of one another.
Right.
He gives you something, you take it and you make it something better and you give it back to him.
Hmm. I
And
agree.
I feel like for a lot of women, they just don't understand that. Like they just can't. They're like, because feminism started as women wanting to have equal rights to men. Women wanted the ability to vote. They wanted to be able to work. They wanted to be able to do those things. And then it turned into, women don't need men. Women can do things on their own. They don't need them. And so it started off small and it kind of turned into something really big. And the truth is that women do need men. We need them.
Absolutely.
You need to have men in your life. Whether it's even if you're not even, married, outside of marriage, like you need men in your life. You need fathers. You need brothers, you need uncles, you need your cousins. You need those people in their lives because,
Hmm.
they're you need them to look up to follow, to lead you through things. You
Hmm.
know, without that, like women have no idea where to go. We would have
Right.
no clue where to go, what to do. Like we would be totally lost. Like we would end up, just we would destroy ourselves like we're currently doing now. Like a lot of women are literally destroying themselves because they don't have a man to lead them. If they had a man to lead and guide them, they wouldn't be causing so much destruction.
Well, yeah, because when you take away that authority, that headship, um, you get chaos, and that's what's happening now. Is we are literally experiencing the chaos aspect of it, and I do agree with you. And he does say women raise the kids and raise the man up so he can become the best man he can be. Emotional support, helping men meet their potential, and taking the stress off being a leader or being a leader. We have our own roles. Knowing your role is beyond important, and it's a stress relief. I know you have my back, and I have yours, and we make the household whole. Actually, my husband, when he was active duty, when he was gearing up for deployment, um, I've always kind of handled our finances. I've always taken care of the household aspect. And I remember it was probably like, I think it was the night, like he was packing, he always packed like the night before. He was packing up, and he said that he goes, I know you got this. He goes, I know I'm going to do my part, and I know you're going to do yours. And he actually did tell me. He goes, he goes, I know a bunch of guys right now that have expressed that they are stressed out because they're not sure how their wives are going to be able to handle with their husband being gone. And he goes, I know that I know that you're secure and you're good. And that was one of the biggest things. Like, one of the things that the guys were, like, one guy broke his phone, um, and it took his wife, they were deployed for 10 and a half months, and his wife never sent anything for replacements. Because she was always spending all their money, and so she never had the funds to actually send anything to him. A bunch of guys, their wives were like, could not handle the finances. One wife was so depressed that she refused to leave the house for almost a month and a half. Like, she just did not leave the house. And so he was concerned about her mental well-being. And when you have that with your husband deployed and he's stressing about what's going on at home, his mind isn't where it needs to be. And then he puts himself and others in
Right.
danger.
And I
And
think
so
I think that
that
kind
was
of
a big thing.
falls under the idea of being an independent woman. Because there's obviously when women, nowadays say that I'm an independent woman, they
Hmm.
mean like, oh, I make my own money, I have my own career, I have my own house, my own car, like all this is mine. When in reality, that's not really what being an independent woman means. Being an independent woman means that you are able to handle things in retrospect for your husband when they're not there. Like, you can be independent enough to, be able to, that if your husband needs you to do something, you can do it on your own. You can handle
Hmm.
it. And I don't know, like, I feel like a lot of women just really have that construed. Like, to me, it's like being independent is having the ability to be able to do things when my husband is not there to do those things himself and to do those things for him when he's not able to. So, like, if he needs something but he can't get it, then I have the ability to get that and provide it for him.
Hmm. Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, obviously, and it's also not being. I think that goes back to the stability and commitment aspect too. Is it's not being afraid to be dependent on him, while at the same time knowing that he can depend on you as well. And there's that give and that take, and there's that trust, that level of trust there, between you two, and being able to provide that for him. I mean, I guess that's a sense of independence, obviously, when he's not there. Um, so I can see where you're coming from with that one. Um,
Yeah, like
um,
being able to, like, because women are a lot more emotional and men are a lot more logical.
mhm,
And, with men, they do have emotions, but they tend to push those emotions aside. And sometimes, I feel like sometimes men don't know how to handle some of those emotions on their own. And so they need
um,
women there to help them through that and to help remind them, like, you're not a machine, you're a human being, and that you know it's okay, like, it's okay to feel a certain way, and to remind them that,
I
also
don't.
reminding them that you appreciate them and that
Mhm,
are there for them.
right. I think I'm going to disagree on one little part. I don't think it's that men don't know how to handle their emotions. It's just that men are told to bury their emotions.
Right.
Um,
And I'm saying because men are taught to suppress their emotions,
mhm,
that when they are faced with those emotions, it's hard to face them alone. Because like
right.
with women, like, I know for me, like, when it comes to like being upset about something or anything, like I'm not afraid to like express that emotion. Like I'm not afraid to cry over things or
Oh, I hate crying.
I hate it too, but I also know at the same time like it's okay to cry about it.
Yeah.
Versus with men, it's not really like that. So for men, I feel like it's important for them to have a woman there that they can trust
Hmm.
to be able to do those things because out in the world while they're working and they're around other people, they don't really get to do that.
Well, and men are mocked if, like, when I see a man actually crying, and you can tell it's that deep, wrenching soul kind of despair. It hits a different way for me than when I see women crying, because I know that that man had to hit a very certain point to to actually get that out, for a lot of men. Like for instance, my dad, I can count on one hand how many times I've actually seen my dad shed some type of tears. And I'm not talking like a full blown like crying. My mom, I'm sure, has. I've never seen my dad actually full blown like crying. I've seen him shed some tears, but that was it. And
Yeah.
but that's something though I know for a fact he has shared with my mom, and my mom has never shared that with us. Um, so, and I
I
want to
mean,
read.
it's a really personal thing.
It is.
You're trusting that person to, keep that to themselves, and you're like a man opening up emotionally to a woman shows that he has a lot of trust in her because that is not something men typically do. So when they
Yeah.
do, it's because they have a lot of trust in them. And it's unfortunately a lot of women take advantage of that and use it against them.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, I remember I saw on, it may have been like Odin's Men or something, but um or maybe Casual Bachelor, I'm not too sure. It could have been even Hermit. But I guess this woman posted on a TikTok where she said, she's, sitting in like a car or something, and she's like pointing up, and then she puts like the words up there. And she essentially says, um, have a gain the trust of a man, and then when he finally breaks down and breaks down, it's like destroy him. Like now you have a weapon against him, weaponize it. And that was downright, that's just downright disgusting. Like how, like that's evil, that's demonic. Like if a man is willing to do that, I
That's
mean,
so wrong.
that right there, it's like you don't deserve any man in your life. I don't care if it's your father, your brother, anything. Like you don't deserve it. How, like I'm sorry, like it literally boggles, like I'm like confused with my words. I'm like, how can you do that to someone, especially with someone, with, like for men who typically do have that hard time, and then when they feel like they can trust you, and you go and not only do you share that with possibly your girlfriends or anything else, but you share that on social media, you share that with the world. And there's that goes beyond betrayal. um
Yeah.
Bandit actually said something interesting though. He says women have to be strong in a mental kind of way. We need a girl, I think he's men, need a girl to hold us when we are low, keep low, keep a secret when told a secret, not gossip. Men lead alone, but we need that rock, and that takes a huge emotional strength to do so. We appreciate a girl that listens to us when we work 12 to 14-hour days and we complain. It's not to complain, but it's to de-stress so that we can do it again tomorrow, so we can provide for the family. Ask any man. What a man wants is someone we can talk to and be there. We want a giant, emotionally strong woman to distress us and keep us focused on the target goal. You do that for a good man. I stress a good man, he will never leave you. Okay, here's the truth. We can't tell anyone about our emotions because we are called weak. And if we are weak, you find us less attractive and you lose the fifis feelings. Sorry, fifis always, it's such a, that word always gets me. Plus, women are known to tell the world gossip, and now my personal stuff is out there and can be used against me. Yep. Or most of the time it's a shame. Shame I trusted you and you let me down. Shame the world knows my problems. Shame my wife can't keep a secret. Shame it's used against me, and shame I'm truly alone. If a man can open up and cry into a woman and not have it used against you, or you would not lose the sexual desire in us, we would cry more. The opposite is true, so we have to hold it in. And now we go to drugs or drinking or porn or any vice to bury the hurt in us because we're out of safe ways of dealing with it. It will end with guys opening up and then sexless marriages to divorce. A woman seeing a guy weak and she will look for another man. So why should we give up the emotions? And I've actually, I have heard women say it, that when they saw their boyfriend crying, instead of feeling sadness for him, they felt disgust.
Because they lack empathy.
Yeah.
And those people who lack empathy are the most dangerous people in our society.
Do you think
the most dangerous people?
Now, obviously, we don't have a study or anything like that, but just in your personal life, do you think, or what you've come across, have you found more women lacking in empathy or more men lacking in empathy in your personal life?
In my personal life, I would probably have to say women. Just because of the fact that, like, I have a hard time getting along with a lot of women. And one of the things that I have noticed is that women have, a lot of the women that I have interacted with, do a lot of them lack empathy, or they show some type of sociopathic behavior, which I guess is another topic we can get into at another time, because sociopaths are actually really interesting to learn about, because it's weird how sociopaths come about. Um, but I feel like a lot of women, because I guess you could say it relates back to the structure thing, that because they didn't have that solid structure and stability and that authority and that leadership, I don't know, it's like it's like they disconnect themselves from men. Like they seem to, for some reason, it's almost like they kind of, because a lot of women have become a lot more masculine nowadays, and they picked up a lot of masculine ideals and ideologies. And so because of that, I feel like a lot of women have picked up on the idea or the notion that, men who are emotional or cry are weak.
But yet, they flip it, and then if a woman is emotional and cries, then she is somehow quote unquote strong.
Yeah, I mean, emotions are a really difficult thing to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Like, cause I mean, you're constantly dealing with emotions all the time, and
Right.
you know they're usually changing, and especially like in early childhood development, if you're not taught how to process those emotions and what those emotions are and how to recognize them and how to deal with them,
Mm-hmm.
it's, that's how you kind of end up with these, psychotic behaviors. Where you end up with, people that, they still scream and yell whenever they have a problem, they throw tantrums, they become violent. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's and a lot of that has is rooted in their early childhood development, like 1 to 4 years old, where during that age it's very critical to establish how to teaching them how to process and deal with those emotions, because if
Mm-hmm.
not, they go into adulthood and they don't know how to deal with it,
Right.
and they learn unhealthy ways of expressing those emotions that end up negatively affecting everybody else.
Right.
No guy that it, nobody likes dealing with somebody who throws a tantrum every time something goes wrong. Nobody likes somebody who is screaming and yelling and throwing things and hitting them and stuff. And so, it's destructive. It's very destructive.
Mm-hmm. It is. Um, One thing I do want to touch on too.
Oh, I was
Um,
there. I was there for the funeral.
is he playing his game?
Yeah, he's talking to his friends. Sorry.
It's okay. My husband is too, but I moved out of the room so that way he could do all of his yelling and shouting that he does. But let's see. One thing Bandit actually brought up that I think is kind of ties into all this as well is he says it's a pill that is forced on us. We would love to open up to women. I'd love to talk about my feelings, be completely honest, but I can't, and this leads to red pill rage and depression. Um, and I think that's what we're seeing
Mhm.
right now as well. Like, it's that domino effect. You remove women from the family. You tell women feminists are telling women you don't want a family. You don't want to settle down with just one man. Why have one man when you can have hundreds, thousands, even? Go do your thing, be a boss, et cetera, et cetera, and make fun of men who express emotions. But you can scream and shout and have your tantrums because that's brave and powerful. Go girl. And then this leads to obviously men now who want to have that stability, and I think men want to offer that stability. Men, I think, naturally want to offer that foundation, and it's pulling that rug, pulling that role away from them, and then it's not allowing men to be able to connect with women because then the women are can't connect, they can't commit, they can't understand a stable, healthy relationship because they can't pair bond anymore. And then obviously this now leads to that term, the red pill rage. This leads to sadly depression in men because men are already isolated as it is, and now they're now becoming more isolated. And not only are they becoming isolated, but they're also being attacked in the same process. And if they choose to walk a certain way and away from the chaos that the women are creating, then they are also, given termed different names, anything from terrorist to incel and everything else. And it just, it widens this horrible, I don't even know what to call it, this disease that's growing between the sexes.
Yeah, the
It-
gap that's growing. And it's
Yeah.
even, it sucks because I've noticed that, even for women who aren't feminists, who don't support those ideologies, or who don't live that kind of lifestyle, it's affected men so much to the point to where even if they do come across a good woman,
Mhm.
they've already, they've been hurt and backstabbed and lied to and all this other stuff already so much that they're not going to trust a woman at all.
No.
They'll think that it's a facade, it's a lie, or they become uncertain due to certain things.
Which then starts destroying the commitment level that the man is willing to give.
Right. And it sucks because it leads
that
these
foundation.
good women to think that, am I just not good enough? And it's like, no, it's not you or what you did. It's what the other women did.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately you're forced to face the consequences of that. Like I'm facing the consequences of it. Like it sucks. Like part of it is my fault.
Mhm.
I was a part of that, group for early on in my life. But even after I had left and I had changed and I worked on myself and have gotten pretty far, I've noticed that even now it's still affecting me to this day, even though I don't play a role in that anymore. I don't do that stuff, but it's still it's probably going to affect me for the rest of my life, where even now it's like I'm in a good relationship, I'm in a happy relationship, but at the same time there's still that fear, that uncertainty because of the stories that other men have gone through, the situations that they have been in. It makes them really uncertain, to where even if they do come across somebody who is good, they're just not going to trust them. They're already ruined.
Yep. There's a good question, Bandit. He says, so lastly, how do we fix this whole thing? We need to go back to the 1980s with hypermasculinity and hyperfemininity. You need to have macho men and docile women, and when that happens, you have a strong household. And then he does say, Harley, it breaks my heart to hear. I actually told Harley this. You say 1980s. I say let's go back a lot further, and maybe like we need to go back a lot further than just the 80s. The 80s was still the time of
the 80s is when a lot of this stuff really was.
That's when it was being supplanted.
It was really blowing up.
Yeah, the 70s and the 80s was when it was really being supplanted, and then the 90s was when it really started. Late 80s, early 90s, up until now is when it really started gaining traction. So, obviously, my dream is probably not possible. I'm thinking like 1820s, but I know that's probably a pipe dream. But so that is a good question. Hey, Saunders, that is a good question. Is how do we fix this whole thing?
I would say sorry.
Oh
my gosh. Anyways, I would honestly say, hold on a minute. Let him get his giggles out. I would say honestly,
my husband. He's like, He's like sitting there cussing at him and yelling at them, like, why didn't you kill this thing?
Yeah, mine doesn't do that. He just laughs really loud. Unfortunately, I can't really move. I'm like plugged into the wall, so
Yeah, no worries, no worries. But Van does say, Harley, if you were my daughter, I would say this advice. You can't fix the path, but you did the hardest thing. You identified the issue.
yeah,
I
that's
think that,
definitely like one of the hardest things to do is just to come to the realization that you have a problem and you need to fix it.
mhm,
And until you fix that problem, it's not going to get better. It's just going to make everything else worse.
yep,
And it was definitely I'm glad that I went through that,
mhm.
but at the same time, it's like it
It
sucks that
breaks
I
my
even
heart
did
that
it
you
in the
did.
first place. But
Yeah,
I can't go back and undo what I did, but I can make sure that going forward, I don't repeat those mistakes.
right. And if you have any daughters, um,
Right.
to instill in them and establish that healthy relationship with their father and then with you, um, and you know, teach them that the value of being and being proud of being a lady, being proud of being a woman, and showing the healthy relationship between you and your spouse. Like one of the biggest things my mom always did was I've I've maybe I've seen like one or two arguments between my parents, but everything else, my mom always agreed with my dad in front of everybody, and then they would go into their bedroom and then they would talk. And that was something that was, you know, really important because it showed the level of respect that my mom had for my dad. And she usually tell my dad like, "Oh, I don't know if we should do that right now," or maybe we should say like, maybe we should not say that, or whatever. But usually with my dad, he's like, "I'm going to say what I want to say, or I'm going to do what I want to do." My mom's like, "Okay." And then when they get home, my mom's like, "I need to talk to you for a moment." And she pulls my dad into the room like, "We need to talk." um so I think, if you do have daughters, I think creating that healthy relationship, like he said, like you identified the issue. And I think identifying the issue, taking accountability, taking responsibility, understanding that there's going to be some uphill battles in regards to how you view commitments and stability. But I think as long as you continue to work on that and it's a daily thing, um, that right there is the biggest blessing that I think you can give to yourself, you can give to
Right.
your fiance, that you
And
can give
another
to your
thing
future
too
children.
is just really taking the time to talk about it and to admit those things. Like that's
Hmm.
that's a hard thing to do is just to actually sit down and talk about it and talk through it because especially like when it comes to, certain issues that can arise, it's hard to sit down and talk to your partner about those certain feelings or those certain
Hmm.
problems because you feel guilty about it. But at the same
Hmm.
time, it's really important to do that because, it if it allows you to say, this is the problem, and
Right,
then you guys work together to fix it.
right.
And it could be a number of different things, and especially when it comes to feeling like certain emotions and stuff, learning how to talk through those emotions and how to process those emotions
Hmm.
is really important because that's going to help build trust and that's going to help keep things stable.
Yep. And if I can give any advice too, it's also choosing the best time to talk about those things too.
Yeah,
um,
obviously, you don't
um,
you don't necessarily talk about those things out in public or
yeah,
right
or like
after a really
right when he
stressful
gets home.
situation and stuff like. And I
Yeah.
mean, I know for me, like it took in some of my early relationships, it took a little bit of learning on that to know when was and wasn't an appropriate time to talk about certain things. And
Mhm.
but that's part of the process is learning and working through it. Relationships
Right.
are work. They're not
Yep.
easy, and sometimes you're going to make mistakes. But as long as you work through those things to where you make sure that you put things in place where you don't make those mistakes, that's going to help. That's going to help create trust and build a stronger bond and have better stability.
Hmm. Absolutely. And get rid of any type of commitment concerns as well.
Mm-hmm. And
You know?
and to avoid resentment too.
Yeah.
Resentment's a big one. Resentment will destroy any relationship really quickly.
Oh, yes. So, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've seen that one with my own eyes as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen marriages just crumble. It seems like overnight due to resentment, and it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Um, and Bandit does say as well. He's talking to you. He says, "If stability is your weakness, read the Bible. Talk to strong families. The key thing is this. It's about your core values. You need to make stability a core tenet of who you are. Work on it. Make it who you are, and honestly, good things will happen. You will trip and make mistakes, but grow. As a conservative, I learned people can change. Changes at a core belief, value, principle, and/or culture. When you make a change, it needs to be at that level. It needs to be in your core being, and honestly work on it. Just because you didn't have stability doesn't mean you can't have it in the future. Understand this is the important. It's the important. You have the power to change your family tree. It's life or death, and I think you will. I think you will. I think
Yeah,
because
I don't want to put my kids through what I went through cuz it was
right,
hell. It was absolute hell going through that. And I definitely want to make sure cuz every parent's dream is for their kids to be better off than they were. At
yeah,
least that should be.
that
That's what it
should be the
should be.
dream.
You would hope that your kids end up better off than you did. And to break a lot of those, curses, breaking generational curses is not an easy thing to do. It's
Hmm.
it's a hard thing to do, but it's also really important because your family is going to be better off
Right,
by doing so. And it's not easy. Old habits die hard. So, making sure that you're not repeating a lot of the same mistakes and that you're giving your kids a better situation than what you had so that
right.
they can be better off.
Yep, absolutely. I think that should be the goal for, like you said, for any parent is to make sure that their children, you know, not necessarily have more in regards to possessions, but simply have more in regards to the knowledge that they can pass on, the experiences they can pass on, um, the gifts that they have to create a better family structure and family future. Saunders does say, he goes, that's the modern problem. What y'all, y'all say is correct. I always say you all, but y'all, what y'all say is correct. But today, people leave relationships very quickly when any challenge arises. Too many options. Once you hit resentment, the relationship is over. And that was something we actually did talk about. Saunders was women, their commitment issues, and that they think that they can go, that the grass is greener on the other side, and then when they actually go
Mhm.
the other side, they realize it's essentially a dying field.
Right. And that's
And
why it's important to have, you know, good mothers um growing up as well because,
hmm,
that's I feel like that's an important lesson that I know, my mother taught me was
right,
to not give up and to keep working. No matter, when it gets tough, keep working through it. And as long as you work through it, it'll pass.
Yeah.
and you'll come out on the other side better.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and like having my mom and the values that she instilled in us. My dad has always called my mom his better half, and I know that he means it to a degree because he's always said, he goes, your mom has a faith in God that I wish I could have. He's like, your mom has never given up on me. She's always stood beside me. And hearing your father talk about your mom like that, and then seeing her, my mom isn't perfect. My parents are not perfect. They've made plenty of mistakes. They'll gladly admit to every single one of them. But seeing my mom and the joy she had of being a wife, of being a mother, and now being a grandma, like that was her thing. Like she originally wanted 12 children. My poor dad. Um, and so that was her thing. She always said, like, she goes, my purpose in life was to be a wife and mom. She goes, that was my goal. She goes, I didn't dream about going, originally she wanted to be a nurse. She was thinking about being a nurse because she likes to heal people. That's her thing. She likes to comfort people. But what she said, once she met my dad, she's like, I need to be a mom. I need to be a wife.
Right.
And so having that background as well, it's like when you have that a healthy background. And again, my parents were not perfect. We've all made more mistakes. But to be able to have at least that, I think, was such a grounding force. And for any of my friends that I had growing up that did have that as well, they had that grounding force. And then sadly for my friends like my friend whose father passed away when she was 10, for other friends whose usually was their fathers that weren't in their lives, they kind of went down a similar path of almost self-destruction, if you will. Some of them kind of turned their lives around, and other ones are still on that path, and it's sad.
Yeah, like I know for me, like ever since I was like young, one of my life goal, my life dream was two things: to have a family to call my own and a place to call home. And it was, especially going through the childhood that I did, moving from house to house, and then after losing my parents, going from family, the household to household. Like it was something that I wanted. Like I wanted stability. And I know once I had it, at first it was hard because I was
Right.
so used to that constant change, but I learned to adjust to it, and I learned to cope with it, and I learned ways to kind of help deal with those things, and also just learning how to express that, learn to be okay with saying like, hey, I'm like feeling this,
Yeah.
I've been this, like this has been going on, and sitting down and working through that and coming to a compromise with it, and just learning how to deal with it. Because
Right.
and I feel like that's like a big thing that a lot of women fail to do, is just sitting down and admitting their faults and learning how to work through them.
Well, because you took accountability, which is the kryptonite to many, many, many women, and you took responsibility, which is also the kryptonite to many, many, many women. And I think that is the difference between, for women, success and failure. Because realistically, that's the difference for men between success and failure. Do they take accountability and responsibility? And for women, it's like they're just not there yet. Women, we are not there yet, and we're being told that we don't need to be there, that somebody else will take over that burden for us. At least the feminists are telling us that. So, sorry, I'm just reading that. Bandit says, Harley, honestly, a church group or someone you trust that you can open up to that's not family or therapist is what can help. He says, find a mentor because you need someone to tell you the hard truth.
Yeah, that's what I did. Like it took me a while to because I actually had a good friend of mine who he's a pastor now, but when I was in high school with him, I used to go to his church groups with him after school and stuff, and they definitely they helped me out quite a bit, and it was a fun experience. I had a lot of fun doing it, and it really helped me out. And we're still good friends to this day. I mean, we don't talk very much because I have a fiance, he's married, and he's got his stuff going on, and I got my stuff going on. But sometimes every once in a blue moon, we'll have the time to call each other and talk about things and work through stuff. So
Right. Yeah, that is a fine line, I think, for women. Obviously, like for if it's a pastor or priest, that can be different. But the fact that you've known him since you guys were in high school, it's not just like an older pastor. That's someone that you know. And I think one of the biggest thing I think for women too is that when we seek mentorship or guidance, I think that we should really gear ourselves either towards the pastoral, like older pastoral men, or the older women. I have like a line I draw with, and I tell women this all the time, like women when they say like, oh, I have guy friends. Even if they're married or if they're in a relationship. And I'm like, are they really your friends? Because friends are someone that we confide in. And I don't think that you should be confiding in a man that's not your husband or your fiance, your boyfriend, whatever. Like that can lead to inappropriate boundaries right there. So if I can offer any marital advice on that one, I always recommend for women that are in relationships that I think it's wise to seek mentorship and guidance, but I think that we should stay away from men that we personally know. And if we are going to go towards men, like I've gone to my priest, who's an older Irish dude, or go towards older women, because I think that is a safe boundary for women who are married.
I mean, yeah, I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not like I'm not. There's only certain things that we talk about, and it's
Right.
usually in relation to religion.
Okay.
It doesn't like involve like my personal relationships or anything. It's more so in seek of like questions about like guidance and stuff
Gotcha. Okay.
and things like that.
Religious
Like
guidance.
no, it doesn't have anything to do with my relationships. Typically, if I'm having relationships issues, I usually talk that through with my significant other. Or if it's something that we can't work through together, then we would go to like counseling or something together, like
Gotcha.
marriage or relationship counseling together to seek outside help for it. But
yeah,
typically if I call and talk to him, it's more so for religious purposes, like religious
gotcha.
guidance.
That makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
sense. I understand that one. Yeah, this is actually something we talked about too. Women are in a tough spot because you should be opening up to your husband only, but if you take advice from women, it's normally designed to sabotage your marriage through jealousy or resentment. Women don't like it when their friends have stability because they lack it and want to bring chaos. Your own friend group could be the sign of your problems from women. And that is true. I think we discussed that. What was it? Saturday.
I think so.
Was that on our walk?
I think yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, I think it was too. That there's been like studies that have been done, like women when if one of them is in having relationship problems, it seems to stem down into the like it
Right.
seeps down
All of
into
a
the
sudden, they
things that
all have
they all
relationship
have relationship
problems.
problems. And or it's if one gets a divorce, then all of a sudden you see their friend groups start falling apart, their marriages start falling apart. And
Yeah.
it is. Women, I think, are in a tough spot because, you know, that's how come, like, actually, typically the women that I seek out, if I'm looking for marital advice, is my mom, my mother-in-law, my sister, and all three want the best for me, and they all have, remind me that they're always praying for my marriage, and they're all married themselves. Or I have like 3 married friends that I will reach out to, and they will be harsh to me, and they'll tell me, like, Marie, you're in the wrong. You need to correct your behavior. And that to me is a friend. If a friend is willing to tell me that I need to correct my behavior, and they're willing to tell me that I am wrong and that they agree with my husband, then I know that they truly want the best for me. I can never have a friend that only ever agrees with me, that only says that I am in the right, because I know I'm not always right. And I need that balance. But for most, or of course for any type of marital issues, if I just need some advice, I typically will go to, like, my mother-in-law, especially if it's my husband.
Yeah.
I'll just kind of keep things generic and just ask her for some marital advice on something.
Yeah.
And
I
I know
usually
he's going to give
sometimes
me.
I'll talk to my sisters.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, I'm the youngest out of all my siblings. Like, the closest sibling to me is my brother, and he's still 16 years older than me. So my sisters are both like, one of my sisters is 20 years older than me, and then I have another sister who's 23 years older than me. So
Mm-hmm.
and both of them, they've been married for, like, one of my sisters, she got married when she was 16 to her
Oh,
high school
wow.
sweetheart, and they're still together. They've been together a long time. And then my other sister, she's been married to her husband. I think they're going on like 14 years now, something like
Mm-hmm.
that. So, yeah. Um and it's usually for things that are more so, I guess, like, um I guess, like, tips and tricks for stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you, like, do something, like, how do you like, manage certain things, how do you manage, taking care of the husband, and doing, other things, or, even just asking them, like, related to, like, maybe, like, cooking, or, like, laundry, or, like, hey, I have this stain, like, how would you get it out, something like
Mm-hmm.
that. um but I would say that, like, when it comes to my sisters, like, I trust them, especially, like, one of my sisters, because both of my sisters, we have the same dad, but we have different moms. So we
Mm-hmm.
kind of my sisters are complete opposites. So my one sister, she is an absolute sweetheart. They're both really hardworking, but one of them's like, she's soft, she's a sweetheart. You know, she's kind of a lot more like me personality wise. Like, she's pretty soft, she's quiet. But then
Mm-hmm.
my other sister, on the other hand, she's like the opposite. Like, she's kind of a, don't take shit from anybody kind of person. So they're very different. So depending on the situation or what I need like some advice for, depends on which one I would go to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not, I mean, yeah, it depends on the topic, the conversation. Um, if you what type of advice, what type of area or field of advice you need. Um, yeah, it does depend on who you go to, but I do agree that women can be in a tough spot when it comes to that because we do have to watch out for, in a sense, the vipers in the field. We have to make sure that that the people that we speak to are going to want the best for us, and not just for us, but also for our husband, for the men in our life. And I want someone who is, who's always going to root for our marriage. I want someone who wants to see it succeed and flourish. And if I can't get that, then I don't consider that person worthy of someone that I should confide in, that I should, um, even bother dealing with in regards to marriage or possibly even friendship at all. Because to me, a friendship is someone I can confide in and someone that I can, um, you know, again, someone who can tell me if I'm wrong, someone who is not afraid um, to, in a sense, put me in my place if I need it. So, oh, hey, SCE. I don't know if you know SCE, Harley.
I do. I remember him.
Okay. He's awesome. I always
Yeah.
enjoyed listening to him talk. Um, but yeah, I think it is a hard spot, and I think it's good that you do have that your sisters as well. I think older sisters. I love being the youngest because, you know, older siblings. They can go through it first.
Yeah, like it was weird for me growing up because, like, by the time I came around, they were already getting married, they had graduated high school, like,
Mhm.
so they were already up and moving on with their lives when I just came into the picture. So,
Yeah, actually, even though I'm the baby of the family, I've been married the longest. Um, I married first, then my sister, and then my brother. So we literally went in reverse chronological order for being married.
I
So
only have one other sibling who doesn't have any kids yet, which
mhm.
honestly I think might be for the best.
I
we
like how
don't
you
talk.
pictured
We
that.
don't talk about him.
We don't talk about Bruno.
Yeah.
Let's toss that in there. Um,
But my
um,
other siblings, yeah, like they've been married for a while. They have kids. Like my brother, he actually has 6 kids.
ooh,
Like, yeah.
you almost got the baseball team.
And it's funny because like now after he's had all these kids and stuff, he's like grown out a beard, and it's so weird whenever I see him with it because most of my childhood growing up he was always clean shaven. So now
Mhm.
seeing him with a beard, it's like he's just I don't know, like I just there's something weird about it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. When your siblings start having kids, it's I don't know. It feels it like you're happy for them, but the same, and you're
Yeah.
excited to be an aunt. But it definitely
It was weird for me being an
do.
aunt because some of my nieces and nephews are older than me.
Oh, that's
So it
true.
was it
Yeah,
was weird. Like it was
it's okay.
it's weird. I actually went to high school with one of my nephews. We went to high school together.
Yeah.
Yeah,
None of my
that was
none
a
of my
weird
nieces or
one to
nephews are
explain.
none of my nieces or nephews are older than me, but I already have two that are almost taller than me. And to be fair, though, their parents are tall as well. But
Yeah.
it's sad when you're
I'm actually a
9-year-old
great aunt
nephew.
technically.
You're what?
I'm a great aunt.
Oh, great aunt. Okay.
Yeah, so I actually have three nephews and a niece. Great niece.
Yeah.
So,
I've got
yeah.
8 so far.
And it drives me nuts because I'm like, I feel like I'm so far behind, but then I'm like, at the same time, it's like, you have to understand these people are like way older than you.
20 years on you.
Yeah, so I mean,
Yeah. I think though, to kind of wrap it up, because I think we kind of moved on from stability and commitment. I feel like we kind of
yeah.
talked about that. But Bandit does say as well, the most important thing for a woman is vetting her man. Looks fade, it's character. Once you understand that, you will have a good marriage. Vetting is beyond important, and making sure, because to me personally, like when I looked at my husband, I want to know, like, can I trust him with my life, and could I see him being the father of our children? And if I could answer yes to those were big things. And of course, he had to pass my family. My family was a big thing for me. Like I told him straight up too, like, you know, if you ever decide to ask me to marry you, you have to talk to my dad. And he did. He did talk to my dad. And so, you know, having those things I think are important. And I think vetting is beyond important for women. I think a lot of women they don't vet, or they think that they have their list. Have you ever seen like their list that they do, Harley? Like women will put down like, oh, he has to be this,
Yeah.
you know, like this tall, or you know, he needs, like, I've even seen women where they talk about like the kind of clothes he wears, things like that. And it's they're looking at the superficial, and they're not looking at what's actually
Yeah.
important
Yeah.
in a man. So
To me, it's just being able to, like, for me, I like for there to be authority, and I like for there to be trust. Like, those are important to me. Like,
mhm.
the authority thing to me is kind of important because it makes me like, it makes me want to do things for him.
Mhm.
Like, I guess maybe it has something to do with my dad and the way that he was, but I feel like having that authority is like really, really important to me because it helps to guide me and helps remind me that, you know, I live in his household, it's his rules, and, you know, I just, you know, as long as I respect him and do what he says, you know, I don't have anything to worry about.
Yeah, it takes the burden off. SCE says vetting is a swipe to the right nowadays. Um, women with a list is like a guy wanting a girl with 36 double D, a 26-inch waist, and a virgin.
Yeah, like it's, I don't know, the list thing to me is kind of silly because it's like, you know,
Mm,
you can always change the way you look, but changing your character,
yeah,
that's not so easy. And, you know, like I said, old habits die hard. So,
yes, they do.
you know, so it's really, I would prefer characteristics over looks because you can work on that. Like, you can work through that. But character is something that you can't really change.
Yeah, very true. And it's hard to find good character, I think, too. Um, with a character, of course, that, you know, that in your core share values with each other. Um, you know, that's the, you know, if to me it's the core values. In fact, one of the things I remember I told my husband when we first started dating was one of the things I was looking for was, and I meant this with all sincerity, was I said, I'm looking for a guy who can put me in my place. And he we had a long conversation on exactly like what that meant and everything. And it was, I wanted that. I was looking for, my father was my model, was my role model. And so I was looking for a man who had similar traits, who had similar core values, who would honor and respect and love his family and the woman that he built his life with. And, like someone who, um, who wouldn't be afraid to, in a sense, like my husband has quote unquote put his foot down on quite a few things in our marriage where he felt, he's like, you know, this like we this needs to happen, or this doesn't need, like we need to, this needs to stop. And he literally would tell me, he's like, I remember there was an army wife that her marriage was disastrous. I think I told you about her. I think I did. Um, I think I told you about her, the one whose husband had the multiple affairs and all of that. Did I tell you about her?
I don't think you told me about
No. Okay. I'll
that
have to tell you
one.
I'll have to tell you about that one more in private. But um, anyways, though, her relationship, because myself and another wife were trying to help her through it, it was just emotionally exhausting, draining. Like it was it was just horrible. And my husband just straight up just said, he goes, she's not allowed in our home. You're not watching her children for her when she needs to go to marriage counseling. Her husband is not to step foot in our home to pick up any kids because they're not going to be here. And he's like, and you are not going to her house. He goes, this needs to be cut off at the head. He goes, this is not healthy. And that's it. He goes, just tell her you need to cut this off. And so I did. And I was so thankful for it because it relieved me of that pressure of, because I felt almost guilty of, in a sense, leaving her to herself, but um she wasn't protecting herself, she wasn't protecting her children, and he was causing some serious concerns in their marriage. Like I said, I'll have to tell you about it privately because it's a lot. It's a lot, and it's horrible. But that's what he did, and I felt so relieved that I was, in a sense, given that permission to say, I need to step away. I can't do this, and I didn't feel guilty at the end. And that was something that I really needed for me because I wanted to help. Like that's how I express my concern for people. I want to help you. And the fact that he said, nope, cut this off, and it gave me that freedom. So
Right.
so that's what I meant. Um,
And I think we should delve more into another stream about as far as being submissive.
mhm.
Like what it means to be submissive, because there seems to be a huge misconception about being submissive means that you're a slave, and
Right.
that's
Or
not
your
true.
doormat. Yeah.
Right. And that's just not true. It's not a thing. Like it's not the same thing. There's a big difference between, being submissive and being, a slave. It is
Yeah.
not the same thing, because one of the biggest differences is the fact that being submissive is a choice. You're choosing to be that way,
Right.
versus if you're a slave, you're forced to be that way.
Right.
So there's definitely a big difference.
Right. I
And
agree. I think that's maybe the next stream we do. We can talk about submission and
yeah,
where that comes from. Um,
and why it's a good thing.
right. I agree. I agree. Um, just to kind of maybe wrap it up a little bit, I'm just going to read some of the things. Bandit does make the point that women say they want a strong man, but then every single law women want or pass, they make men weak because then they can't act strong. SCE says women now want traditional men but refuse to be traditional themselves, and that's why relationships just don't work. It's a duality of women. They want strong men, but every law they pass forces men not to be strong, and then they complain, where did all the strong men go? If you want me to lead, allow me to lead and get the government off my back. Otherwise, you're getting a weak man with no frame, or you get MGTOW, where men don't play because the game is rigged. And Bandit says, if you ever want me to come up, I'm always down. Yeah, we'll discuss. I think we want to agree, like if we're going to bring someone up, I think we both want to be able to agree and try to plan that out ahead of time too. Submissiveness is courage to be led by a man. And then Saunders said submission in this sense means allowing the men to lead. That's it. Not allowing, but following a man's lead. And then SCE says women refuse to be submissive. Change the term to willingly cooperative, and it makes more sense. I think it's just because of the term submissive. It has become a dirty word. It's an open invitation. We'll definitely talk about Bandit. And I'll definitely reach out to you and talk to you about that. But submissive, I think, within women's circles, feminist circles, has become a dirty word. And it's because there is a lack of understanding. Naughty word, naughty. Yes, Saunders, sorry, naughty. And yeah, but even willingly cooperative, I don't think women even like that phrase, willingly cooperative. I don't know. Do you agree with that, women, or Harley? Do you think that women also have a problem with willingly cooperative?
I think a lot of women just have the problem of having to, like, a lot of them see it as having to just be like a servant to their man, which,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, technically, yeah, but they don't see it as, you know, a good thing. They seem to see it as a bad thing. Like, oh, I
Mm-hmm.
have to, you know, I have to do all this stuff for you because you can't do this stuff yourself. And it's not that he can't do the stuff himself, it's that there's a willingness to it. Like, you're doing it because you want to do it. You want to do those things for him, and in return, he provides for you. He gives you stability. You know, he puts a roof over your head. He gives you food to cook. You know, like it's you know, it's a small. It's just a small price to pay for, you know, a big
Well,
exchange. Like,
I wouldn't even say it's a price to pay. To me, it's the free giving of each other and what we provide for each other.
right.
You know, if my husband doesn't demand obedience, you know, to in that sense of, you know, like you said, it's like slave owner and, you know, slave. But he does, you know, say, he goes, I am the man of this home, and I will set the boundaries and the rules. And obviously we cooperate and we agree, and I am agreeing to give or to let him say, or I'm agreeing and saying, yes, you are the man of our home, and I want you to set the boundaries and rules. And I think that is I think a very powerful thing for a woman, because letting the man know, like, I am trusting you, I am giving you all my trust to, you know, provide that foundation, to provide that stability for us, to guard that, to protect that. and knowing that I'm safe with you.
Right.
And I think because a lot of women, going back to the lack of stability and commitment, they a lot of women they don't want to do that, because that involves a level of trust that I think most people don't want to give.
Right. And one of the things that I always hear that women tend to bring up is that, well, if you give that to him, then he can, take advantage of you.
Mm-hmm.
He can, abuse you, have complete control over you, and you can't do anything about it. And it's like, I think a lot of women completely misunderstand and are missing the point of trust. You submit to him and you allow him to take control
Mm-hmm.
because you trust him to lead you.
Right.
If you don't trust him to do those things, then why would you even be with him in the first place?
Yep.
So it's like that argument doesn't really make a lot of sense, because it's like, well, why would you put yourself in that position if you didn't trust him to do that for you?
Right. Real side note, can you wrench up Bandit and SCE? Can you give them wrenches?
Yeah. Give me 1 second.
Because I know you're on the main StreamYard. It won't allow me to do it.
Well, can I do it through StreamYard? No, I can't wrench them through StreamYard. I have to do it through YouTube. Hold on.
Oh, through YouTube. Okay. But yeah, I think that could probably be our next topic, though, go into submission. Or as SCE calls it, willingly cooperative. I'd say it's the same thing for me. So I think that'd be a really good topic for next time. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that would be a good topic, just to kind of help explain what it actually is and what it means and why it's important, because that seems to be like one of the biggest issues, is that there's a lot of misconceptions around that. There's a lot of, false ideas behind that, and a lot of that's just due to, feminist propaganda. So yeah, I think it would be like an important thing to like clarify and talk about and explain what it really is and what it really means.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. Sorry. Man, it said submission or BDSM. Take your pick, ladies.
I mean, when you think about it, they kind of go hand in hand. I mean, that's kind of what, that's kind of part of, the part of BDSM is the dominance and submission. Like that's kind of how that works, so
I'll leave that one there, and we'll just go from there. Do you have anything else you wanted to add, or anything else you wanted to?
I guess honestly, like, to kind of wrap it up, is just the fact that like women have a hard time with commitment, and a lot of it just has to do with the fact that a lot of it does come from childhood, and also the fact that like it also deals a lot in stability. And having that stability and being content and comfortable with that stability, and to not, constantly, I guess I wouldn't say not desire the change, because that's not something you totally can't control, but understanding and recognizing it, and sitting down and talking through those issues and learning how to deal with it, because the grass isn't greener on the other side. The grass is the same grass there that you have here.
Yep.
It's no different. It's not
Possibly
going to
even dirtier.
Right. So it might be dead. There might not
Yep.
be any grass; it could just be dirt. You know, so it's learning to be content and learning how to work through those issues and just being committed, because at the end you're going to come out better for it.
I agree. I don't think I could have said it better. So.
All right,
Well, I thought this was a good talk. I think we kind of, went off on different things here and there, but I think overall we circled back.
Yeah.
Not too bad, because normally I feel like we get on one thing and then we start going off, and
Yeah.
it just kind of keeps going. So yay for us. But thanks for anybody who stopped by, anybody who's going to listen. If you do listen to the whole thing, awesome. And hopefully we'll catch you on the next stream.
Thank you, everyone, for coming, and we hope to see you guys next time.
All right, girl. I'll talk to you later, okay?
All right. Bye.
All right. Bye.